Transit, layover. So many of us don't have direct flights to the Philippines. So we always consider what is the requirements in our destination. Pero one thing that we also have to consider, the rules and requirements of our layover countries. Kasi if we don't follow that, possibly we could be denied boarding. So in this video, we'll talk about the transit rules and requirements for six of the most popular countries where travelers to the Philippines transit. Again, ito pa ay para sa mga hindi direct flight, yung dadaan pa ng, for example, Japan, Korea, then this video is for you. Do you need pre-departure testing? Do you need to do an online form? Kailangan bang app i-download? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, I want to be very clear. Transit travelers are defined as those traveling to another country without clearing arrival immigration. It means, for example, if you're coming from the US, you have a layover in Japan, you do not need to exit the terminal. You do not need to go through immigration kasi your plane is on the same terminal, your bag is checked in all the way to the Philippines. For example, this flight with Asiana on July 22 from Los Angeles, layover in Incheon, Korea for 1 hour and 45 minutes, and then from Incheon to Manila. Ayan, transit lang. So, dadaan lang. Travelers who intend to clear arrival immigration to enter layover country or book separate flights under different itineraries, which requires them to enter the country to collect baggage and check in again for the connecting flight, are not considered transit travelers. Kung exit ka pa sa airport, kukunin mo pa yung bag mo, dadaan ka sa immigration, tapos mag-check-in ka na naman ulit. Yan po, hindi na yan makonsider as transit, hindi na yan siya layover lang. Talagang entry na yan. So, mas stricto po. Please avoid those kind of flights. Yung mga lalabas ka pa ng airport, mag-check-in na ulit. Wag po. That is very risky. So many Filipinos have had issues with that. And usually, these third-party sites, they let you book your flight for cheaper price, pero minsan it's trouble. Anyways, let's start. Again, if you want layover po sa other countries, please make sure it's the same airline or it's the same airport and terminal. So let's start with layover in Japan. What is the rule when you layover or transit in Japan? This has been a hot topic. I want to make it clear. Travelers who are not entering Japan and transferring directly to a third country by transit are not required to submit any documents and undergo PCR test. In Filipino, kung kayo po ay may layover sa Japan, layover lang yan, change flight ka lang. Opo, hindi na kailangan ng PCR test, walang mga documents na kailangan isubmit. Yung Philippines, yung One Health Pass lang ang talagang kailangan mo kung may booster ka. And then kung walang booster, yung negative test result at One Health Pass. Yun, Philippine requirements lang. Walang requirements ang Japan kung transit lang. Nonetheless, travelers are still subject to the travel and entry restrictions and requirements of their final destination. Now, if you are traveling through Tokyo Haneda Airport or Kansai International Airport in Osaka, you can transit without a visa if you have a confirmed onward ticket within the next 72 hours. Ayan. Masyadong mahaba na ngayong 72 hours, no? So, layover guys, dapat hindi na yan sumobra pa ng 72 hours. Umabot nga ng 2 days. Masyadong mahaba na yun. So this information I got it from ANA website and Japan Airlines website. They both say the same thing. Basta transit lang, walang requirements. Follow ka lang kung anong hinihingi ng Pilipinas. Now, I've seen some travelers report that they have their flights are with transfers Tokyo, then to Narita. Ako po, wag po yan. Kasi lalabas ka na naman ng airport, tsaka malayo po. Tokyo, Haneda, and Narita Airport are far from each other. 1 hour travel, ganun. So, please avoid such flights. Next country is Annyeonghaseyo, South Korea. For travelers with layover in Incheon, Korea, what is the requirement? Are passengers who transit through Korea on the way to a third country required to submit a negative test result? The answer is, if they transit through Korea without entering, transit lang, they do not need to submit a negative PCR test result. Ayan, clear. Kung may layover kayo sa Incheon, Korea, hindi po kailangan ng negative test result. Kung boosted ha, kung exempted na. Passengers are permitted to transit at Incheon International Airport within 24 hours without any documents. That information is coming from Incheon Airport po. Ayan, kung transit lang, hindi kailangan ng PCR at wala mga documents na kailangan. Next country is Singapore. I transited through Singapore last year and it was really fine. There are places you can stay. If you have a long layover, there is hotel po inside the airport. But you have to book it in advance. Hindi pwedeng upon arrival, dun ka pa magpabook. Dapat mag-book in advance. There are also lounges there na you can rest. Anyways, let's go. What are the rules for transit in Singapore? Singapore does not require proof of vaccination, COVID-19 test, travel visas, or entry approvals for transit travelers. Ayan, clear na clear. Diba before, kailangan ng test, pero actually matagal na yan this year tinanggal. If you are just transiting in Singapore, no requirements. No PCR test, wala. You just follow Philippine requirements. Travelers who transit in Changi, I hope I pronounced that correctly, must have their flights booked on the same itinerary in order to ensure that their checked-in luggage can be tagged through from the origin airport to their final destination. Ayan, dapat same itinerary guys. Wag yung mga pa-change pa, mag-check-in na naman, mag-change terminal, mag-change, ay naku, masakit po yan sa ulo. So, traveling with flights operated by different airlines on the same journey is allowed if the flights are made under the same booking. Dapat one booking. Please, I suggest book talaga kayo sa airlines direct. Kasi yung mga third-party sites na yan, minsan walang pakialam kahit yung flight nyo is impossible. Next country is Thailand. Sawadika. Tama ba yun? So, if you guys have transit in Thailand, itong Thailand, medyo strict. In line with Thailand government regulations, if you're transiting between international flights in Bangkok, Suvarnabhumi, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, Suvarnabhumi Airport, your itinerary must be booked on the same ticket and you must not leave the transiting area and enter Thailand. Ayan na naman. Bawal talaga lumabas ng airport. Kasi kung transit lang, dapat same airport, nandun ka lang sa loob, di ka nalalabas. Pero mas strict pala yung Thailand. Pakinggan nyo to. International travelers transiting through Thailand, layover not exceeding 24 hours, through checked luggage only, cannot leave transit area, final destination is outside of Thailand, do not need to register to Thailand Pass. Ayan, kung transit ka lang, less than 24 hours lang layover mo doon, hindi mo na kailangan, you don't need to register to Thailand Pass. But you are required to have the following documents. Ito, masakit sa ulo. A valid travel insurance policy to cover medical expenses in Thailand with a minimum coverage of $10,000. Ayan, kailangan ng insurance kung magta-transit sa Thailand. Another thing is that if you're fully vaccinated, then just bring that certificate. But if you are unvaccinated transiting in Thailand, you need to show a negative COVID RT-PCR test result issued in English or Thai within 72 hours before departure from the first embarkation point. Ayan, so if you are unvaccinated, sa Philippines, required pa din. So please comply na lang sa Philippines. So, PCR within 48 hours kung unvaccinated transiting in Thailand. Ayan. Medyo strict itong Thailand. Insurance, vaccination proof, or negative test result. Now, this excludes travelers transiting without leaving the aircraft. So, more stopover lang. If you guys have a stopover in Thailand, meaning you don't have to leave the airplane, nandun ka lang sa loob, hindi siya considered. Hindi kailangan ng insurance at test. Kung yung airplane lang talaga is nag-stopover, you did not exit the aircraft. Pero yung lalabas ka talaga sa aeroplano, kailangan ng insurance, vaccination proof, or negative test result. Medyo complicated ito sa Thailand. Next country is Hong Kong. So what is the requirements if you have a transit or layover in Hong Kong? Children aged 3 years old and below and transit passengers with 72 hours layover are no longer required to present RT-PCR starting June 1 again. Ang ganda ng timing. Starting June 1, if you are merely transiting in Hong Kong less than 72 hours, you do not need negative test result. There's no forms to fill out if it's just a layover. This is starting June 1. According to Cathay Pacific, travelers should be checked through at the origin port with their boarding pass printed and baggage tagged through to the final destination. Ayan, again, dapat talaga yung boarding pass nyo all the way to the Philippines na. Passengers transiting through Hong Kong must carry a printed boarding pass. Self-printed and mobile boarding passes will not be accepted. Again, this is according to Cathay Pacific. Your boarding pass must be printed. Next up, we have Qatar Doha. This is our last country. For those with transit in Doha, Qatar, ayan, passengers who are transiting through Doha and not leaving the airport are not required to present any test results or certifications above the requirements of their departure or destination country. Ayan, clear na clear. Walang requirements ang Doha, Qatar. Hindi kailangan ng negative test result. Walang mga forms as long as transit ka lang. Travelers cannot remain in the transit area for more than 24 hours between flights. Ayan, iwasan niyo po yung layover that is more than 24 hours in Qatar. Well, it should be enough na. So, walang mga requirements, basta transit lang. And that's it for our 6 major countries where travelers to the Philippines transit yung mga requirements. Basically, Singapore, Japan, Korea, Qatar, Hong Kong, konti yung Hong Kong. Itong 4 countries wala ng requirements. Yung Hong Kong lang kailangan talaga printed yung boarding pass. Thailand, medyo stricto na insurance kailangan kahit transit lang. Grabe sila. Yun lang. So I hope that is clear, guys. I hope it relieves people who are worried. I hear some travelers say who are transiting, especially in Japan, oh, I know I'm no longer required by the Philippines to have PCR, but just to be sure, I will take the PCR test. That's your decision, but it's a waste of money. Some people are paying $100. Sayang naman yung pera, sayang yung time, if hindi mo naman kailangan, nagpa-test ka pa. But it's your choice. I'm just giving information here. Now, let's review the Philippine entry requirements while we're at it. If you're an adult, 18 years old and above, and you're boosted, no need to show negative test result, 1 health pass lang. And then there's no quarantine. But if you're only fully vaxxed, no booster shot, you need pre-departure testing. Unvaccinated, of course, need talaga ng test. And then there's quarantine upon arrival for the unvaccinated and partially vaccinated. While for teenagers, 12 to 17 years old, if you're fully vaccinated or if you have a booster, either of that, you are exempted from pre-departure testing. Unvaccinated teenager, 12 to 17 years old, must have a negative test result. While 1 health pass, of course, that's required for everyone. And then you need to be fully vaxxed so that you may avail 0 quarantine. While for children 11 years old and below, pre-departure test is exempted for 3 years old and below. Mga 3, 2, 1, tapos less than mga months old pa lang. No need to show negative test result. While, for example, may 9 years old ka, may 10 years old, may 7 years old, tapos the parent or the guardian traveling with the kid is unboosted. O kung kailangan ng parent, kailangan na din ng bata. So, we'll follow the status of their accompanying parent or guardian. So, 4 to 11 years old. 1 health pass, of course, required yan. And then quarantine, they will just follow kung ano yung status or protocol ng parent or guardian. But if you have kids, if you're fully vaccinated or boosted, and then you have a kid, 11 years old and below, unvaccinated, walang quarantine. Walang quarantine. We'll follow lang the status of the parent or guardian. So that is all about transits and rules for the 6 major countries for travelers to the Philippines. Most countries in the world, do not have requirements for transits, but it's always best to check, double check. That is all the updates. Before I end this video, I just want to give some reminders to please always check your email for the advisory or of your airlines, and then always check Philippine travel changes. You can do that by subscribing to my channel. I'll see you with another travel update information. God bless you all.